thing I learned about the zero spend month is I used up stuff that's in my pantry. I only have these two cupboards and one other that's in my pantry for shelf-stable foods. Let me show you the other one. This is all that is left. And yes, you see some processed foods there, and I'm slowly working on it. So I'm going to sit down and share with you a little bit what I learned about zero spending and not going to the discount grocery store as much, and learning to use up the food that's in these cupboards. My friends, and welcome to Homestead Tessie. And today is another heart-to-heart. Come sit down with me and have a cup of coffee or a little tea, or if you're like me, a nice cold glass of lemonade. Today's update is going to be on my zero spending month. Yes, I'm at the end of my zero spending month, and this month went very fast. So I'm just going to share with you a little bit of what I learned and what I'm going to do from here on out. For those of you who are new to my channel, a month ago I decided to do a zero spending month. And what I would do is I wouldn't spend on anything other than like milk and a few essential items. And I really learned a lot about that. I learned a lot about that experience, and I really learned a lot about myself. And the number one goal was to not have as much into spending, because we are going through a major change. And that change is pretty much soon taking place. All the paperwork is implemented. Everything's ready to go for the first week of September. And so that means our income will be reduced greatly. And so what have I learned? I learned that I spend way too much money on food. I produce enough of food here that I and Chevy Man could live off of. But I'm a foodie, and some women like going to the malls and like going to get shoes and things like that, and I like getting food. I like getting food that is on sale, and I like getting food that is marked down, and I take such great pride and joy in preserving that food. And I realized I just spent way too much money on food, and that stopped drastically. And I'm going to have a lot of videos here this coming week of showing you what I did with all the food in my freezer, because I didn't waste hardly any of it. We used it all up and are using it up. Some of it isn't quite used up yet. But so I learned about reducing my food consumption. I learned about reducing my food spending. I also learned about staying home. Now, I am a homebody, and most of the time I am home. What I learned was, when I wasn't hoarding so much food and going to the discount grocery store, I realized that I was using up a lot of the food that I had here on the homestead. And in turn, I was becoming more and more motivated because I wasn't looking everywhere in the world for something. I was able to be inspired because I would open up my cupboards and I could see what I had. So that was another thing that I really learned about the zero spending month, was to use up what I had. And I realized I had some things I never even knew I had. So that was another really big thing that I learned about the zero spending month. Where do I go from here? What have I learned with the zero spending month? It has been life-changing for me. You know, I don't know what your zero spending month would look like, but for me, I realized really quick what my addiction was. And of course, my addiction was food. And buying food and eating food and preserving food. Now, all of that is great. But when you go and you buy hordes and hordes of cake mixes and brownies and muffin mixes and stuffing and things that are really high price processed, you know, it comes to a point in time where you either going to use it up or it's just going to linger in your cupboards. And also the frozen foods. So what I'm going to do is I'm still going to improvise a lot of the zero spend. I'm just going to go and I'm going to see if there's things that are on sale, like meat. I could can meat or things like that, things that aren't highly processed. And canning that and preserving that, not freezer items. I'm not going to hoard up on ice creams and cakes and cookies and pies and things like that. So that was one thing I really learned. I know a lot of you are going to be going on this challenge, and I want to give you some tips that I've learned. If you feel that going once a month with no spend challenge is too drastic, I would strongly suggest you start it with no spending week. Now, if no spending week is even too drastic, start with no zero spending day. I know some people go to Starbucks and things like that every day. So I would do the zero spend day, and then I would do the zero spend week, and then I would do the zero spend 2 weeks, and see how far you can go. For me, the zero spend month was not as bad of a challenge because I am a homebody. I am a stay-at-home wife. I don't work away. So for me, it was a lot easier because I didn't have to worry about being on the road and seeing the billboards and seeing all these neat things and, being hungry on the road. And of course, when you start a challenge or anything like that, oftentimes you will find a difficult situation. And as you know, about 10 days into my zero spend, I had an emergency situation where I had to pay $500. And I was really depressed about that. I said, finally, I'm going to do a zero spend month, and what do I get? A $500 bill because of an emergency oral surgery. But that's what happens in life, and don't be too hard on yourself. If something happens that is an emergency, then you just have to do it. And I learned that not to be so hard on myself. Emergencies come and emergencies go, and there's nothing we can do about it. So the zero spend month has changed me, literally. And I don't think I'm ever going to go back to, and I know I won't. I know I won't go back to, the life that I lived before. I'm not going to hoard up. I don't have a freezer. And I wanted to share with you, too, that it's really so many things are happening behind the scenes. And I'm really excited to share that with you all. But you're going to have to wait a couple weeks. I'm giving a once-a-month update on what we are doing that is reducing our cost of living. And some of them are what some would say drastic, and others would say, well, that's common sense. But we really are getting down to the bare bones, and it's kind of a fun challenge because we're actually seeing, instead of the money leaving, it's coming. And I understand that we are living in a world where it's very hard to save any amount of money. And I just want to share with you, I'm coming from this lifestyle as a woman that is an older woman that it just has a husband at home. I understand that some of you watch my channel and have children. And I understand that it is virtually almost impossible to do zero spending, depends on the age of your children. And so I am coming at this on a more of an empty nester situation, and an empty nester, an older generation. Because quite frankly, the older generation are having it hardest. Because the older generation are living on a very fixed income. And my channel is for everyone, but the majority of the people who are subscribed to me are more on the older income type, and they are women. So I'm trying to share with you tips and tricks to live on a very reduced income. And especially for the older ones that don't have children at home, that can be quite a challenge. I hear stories every day where older people are having to decide whether they're going to eat or take their medications. And that is a hard life to live. And it's a life that we should not live, especially here in the United States of America. But America is becoming a third world country. Now I know I do not talk about politics on my channel. And I do not talk about controversial subjects usually, because I'm not a controversial person. I don't like drama in any form or shape. But I will just throw this out to all of you. I do believe that we are living in a time that was not like the time that we grew up in and that we were born in. And I think that is for everyone. Those of you who are younger and lived in the 80s and were born in the 90s, that was the years of a lot of excess. And I do believe that we are living in a time not like we have lived in a long time. And I do believe that we should try to implement things for ourselves instead of having the choice, giving the choice to ourselves instead of having it be forced upon us. We are very, very blessed to still live in the United States of America. We are much better off than a lot of countries. But I fear we are not as good as what we are told we are. And I do really believe that it's time that we put our boots on and decide how we are going to live our lives. If it's not for this generation, it's for the teaching of the next generation. Because our hearts have turned away from the Lord. And I do really believe that there's going to come a day when our lives, every single one of us, may drastically change. If it's not in my lifetime, it will be in the lifetime of my children or grandchildren. And I just really feel passionate about doing all we can, not living in fear. Oh, I live in no fear whatsoever. But not having our heads buried in the sand as well, and just taking accountability of our lives in our own households, in our own situations. So that's why when we are going on a much lower income, we are taking the steps now. We're taking the steps now so we are able to weather that storm and change that life and change that lifestyle. So I really want to thank you all for watching, and especially for watching my Heart to Hearts, because that is how you really get to know me, and you really get to know, the person behind the videos. And I just really, really thank you all for your input. I've learned a lot from you guys. You guys say how much you've learned from me, but the comments and the suggestions, I have learned a lot, and I am really, really growing in my learning ability because of all of you. And all of us getting together and coming together with ideas really is an ultimate family. And I just want to thank you all, and thanks again for watching, and we'll see you tomorrow, because every day it's Homestead Tessie.